Well, welcome everyone. I am Carl Bruch, and I am president of the Environmental Peacebuilding Association, and I am delighted to welcome everyone to the fourth series of 4 webinars / discussions on education and environmental peacebuilding, convened and led by the Education Interest Group in partnership with the University of Delaware. We are delighted to have you all here. This has been part of what is called the Road to Geneva. On February 2nd through 4th, we will have the second International Conference on Environmental Peacebuilding, which will be held in Geneva, Switzerland, and online. It will be a hybrid event. Registration is open. The agenda is about to be announced. It is an amazing, amazing event. I can't wait to share the agenda. This, as I said, is part of the Road to Geneva. This is a series of events and initiatives leading up to the conference that are meant to, in part, broaden the discussions of the issues and engage as many people as possible in the discussion of what is environmental peacebuilding, what are the priority issues, where do we need to go. And this has fed into the shaping of the agenda. And I'm very happy to say that we have a session that will be taking the learning from this series and sharing it and using that as a springboard for further action and discussions at the conference. And I think with that, I'd like to acknowledge the leadership of the chairs of the Education Interest Group, including Nancy Boyer, Ramon Boyer, and Ken Conca, but I also know that a lot of other people in the interest group have been active in this. So this is, I would say, an unusually active interest group, relying not only on the chairs, but also the members to engage. Today will be moderated and led by Fulgence Twizerimana. Fulgence has worked for 8 years as an educator and English teacher in secondary schools. He is now an assistant teacher at the University of Ngozi in the Languages, Communication, and Arts faculty. He is also the coordinator of the American Shelf in Ngozi. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in applied pedagogy, English, and Kirundi teaching from the University of Burundi. In 2012, he was studying at the university. While he was studying at the university, he founded, with 2 other friends, Ikereziwaku, a youth organization that promotes peace and reconciliation through cultural events. 2 years later, he worked as a volunteer for Parchem, a local NGO committed for peace, awareness raising, human rights advocacy, and fighting corruption. Fulgence is a fervent peace builder. Inspiring and empowering others, especially the youth, is a crucial objective for him to tackle both local and global challenges related to peace and the environment. In 2019, he initiated with Dr. William M. Timpson Peace English Clubs, in which he teaches students and others English through the study of peace. Fulgence is a Rotarian, alumni of World Beyond War and Youth African Leaders Initiative, YALI organizations. He's also a member of the Environmental Peacebuilding Association's Education Interest Group and a volunteer in various local organizations. He holds certificates in leadership, entrepreneurship, environment, community organization, project monitoring and evaluation, adolescent reproductive health, and civic leadership, among others. Fulgence, thank you so much for joining us, all the more so under the blackout that you are suffering. We are delighted you are able to be here, and I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you so much, Carl Bruch. I'm happy to be here. Also happy to be the moderator of this webinar. Maybe I'm going to
Sorry, Fulgence, you cut out there for a few seconds. Fulgence? Fulgence is in Burundi right now, Bujumbura, I believe, and they are suffering a blackout, which is he's been working off of his phone. Should we maybe turn over to Mackenzie next?
Sounds good.
Would you like to introduce her?
Yeah. Mackenzie, would you like to introduce yourself? And
sure.
You know best.
I'm happy to introduce myself. I'm just gonna, so hi everyone. It's really great to be here and see and participate in this interest group. Nancy approached me, I think like a couple of months ago, and asked me to talk about some of my experiences teaching remotely on environmental peace building. I'm currently an assistant professor of natural resources and environmental sciences at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. I have been here since 2018. My role has shifted in terms of how people think about my scholarship a little bit from strictly environmental peace building to more of I'm now teaching more in environmental justice roles, but I see those things as very inherently connected. So in many ways, I still think I'm teaching environmental peace building kind of directly. But Nancy asked me to talk about tips for teaching environmental peace building classes remotely. And so when I was thinking about what to talk about, right, I have a lot of different contexts to draw on. So I've worked on issues around environmental conflict and peace building in several different contexts. So Afghanistan, I worked for the Wildlife Conservation Society from 2007 to 2010, and that experience directly pushed me into a PhD on environmental peace building. I've done some work in South Sudan, in India, and then my dissertation work was primarily in Sierra Leone and Ghana, looking at extractive industries and governance, environmental governance and peace building. And now I've got projects ongoing in Colombia with a collaborator there. And actually I'm working on environmental conflict and peace building in the context of Illinois, looking at energy transitions and energy infrastructure. So bringing a lot of the lessons that I have picked up from studying in these contexts and applying it into the United States context, which has been interesting. So, right, despite these being very active research locales for me, right, teaching has always been a part of my mandate. And so when I was working for the Wildlife Conservation Society in Afghanistan, my program director asked me to become a liaison to Kabul University and reach out to students there and teach some classes. And so that became kind of part of my broader mandate. And so I just kind of put a list out there of the classes I have taught as either in my role at WCS or as a professor. But what I'm going to talk about in terms of how I incorporated teaching and education into my role in Afghanistan was both through my role at Kabul University, but also in my role as the director of the Wildlife Trade Program. Because part of my mandate was to figure out how to help the government of Afghanistan create processes and do things. And I was looking specifically at a red listing process. They wanted me to try and help the National Environmental Protection Agency figure out how to create a process to list protected species, essentially. And so we ended up partnering with the University of Richmond in Virginia to do this project, and it incorporated remote teaching. And it was probably one of the most effective and happy and cool things I've done as a teacher. And so I thought I'd reflect a bit on that today and how we could think about that through the EnPAx or EnPAx Association. So in my position at the Wildlife Conservation Society, again, I was charged with creating a red list program. And so we were working with the National Environmental Protection Agency to create a process to list protected species and come up with scientific justifications for why they should be protected and listed. And so, of course, being in, at the time, what was post-conflict Afghanistan, they had few staff. The organization was building capacity, which the Wildlife Conservation Society was integral in trying to help do, and there was few resources. And so what we did was we created a listing committee that worked with the National Environmental Protection Agency, Kabul University, and then we created a partnership with the University of Richmond. And what this consisted of was me working within this class context to basically have students do a lot of the research, background research on species listing, working directly with the committee, of course, in a remote fashion. And the instructor of the course incorporated all of that work directly into his syllabus. And so what ended up happening was we used an entire semester, and we did this both the fall and the spring semester for students at the University of Richmond. And so we had students essentially directly working within this red listing process. And so it was really interesting for the students because they felt like they were part of a policy process. They had direct interfacing meetings with the listing committee, consisting of Kabul University faculty and NEPA officials. And their classwork actually went towards something which they thought was really cool. And the listing committee thought it was really interesting to work with American students. And so you have this very cool intercultural exchange. And so again, these were semester-long projects where students would do the research, and then it would culminate in several meetings at the end of the semester. And I think students had to wake up, which for college students, this was a big deal. They had to wake up at 5 a.m. in order for us to do the meeting in Afghanistan time. And so what they ended up doing is the listing committee, when I was working there, evaluated about 65 species, and 20 of those species listed or proposed for listing were actually evaluated by the University of Richmond students, undergrad students, which was a really cool accomplishment. And so what we kind of learned from this, I think my country director at the time wrote this up and presented it at a meeting of the Ecological Society of America. Students loved the experience, as did the listing committee in Afghanistan. There was great intercultural exchange. Students got to learn by doing. And for those students, I think interfacing with real people made these problems more real in the sense that they actually exist in the world. But the big challenge, of course, is that this was contingent on finding these kinds of opportunities for exchange and willingness to let students engage in the learning process. There was a lot of scientists who disapproved of what we were doing because we were basically allowing undergraduate students to kind of contribute to this process. But in all honesty, much of the information on Afghanistan's species were very outdated anyway. And so it was essentially, we had students doing a huge literature review for us that helped catch us up on what was out there and what was possible. And so thinking about how to kind of bring these sorts of ideas in is you could use associations like the Environmental Peacebuilding Association to facilitate these kinds of exchanges across different contexts or countries, right? I think this is often a common model in business schools where you get students to engage with companies or organizations in order to use their labor to solve real problems. And students actually like this kind of work because they feel like it's actually going towards something. And so thinking about how to incorporate that into something like environmental peace building, I think would be an interesting and exciting way forward, because overall, this is a really, really effective and successful project. And it is only possible via remote teaching, given how many people were involved in the collaborations. So that was one example that I have personally participated in that I felt was really successful and is a successful example of environmental peace building remote teaching being done effectively. And currently in my role as assistant professor at Illinois, I have, given the pandemic, I had to transition to teaching these two classes highlighted in red remotely. And I'm sure all of us as professors and teachers have had to adjust and transition in all the usual ways. But I think in regards to environmental peace building, the thing that I have found most challenging is helping students, especially college-age students, with kind of limited life or personal experiences, connect to material that is ultimately very difficult, especially if you're a student who's primarily based in the United States or Europe. And so in person teaching these kinds of things, I would often engage in activities or role play to help students live this or kind of imagine what it would be like. And so the challenge to moving all of this online has been finding ways to help students connect to the material in ways that actually mean something and convey the gravity of this kind of material. And so one way that I have tried to meet this challenge is by doing more kind of unique or non-traditional assignments. And so for 2 semesters now, I've asked students to write. Normally I rely a lot on writing, but I've allowed students to use any medium of their choice to work through and understand environmental peace building concepts. And so I've had a lot of artists come through my classes, interestingly enough. And so this is a picture. I have the permission to use the picture of both the student and his work. But he created a piece of art that I think could probably be sold, trying to work through these issues of environmental justice and environmental peace building, right? And he, the reason I used him as an example is he specifically wrote to me to say that no teacher had ever encouraged him to use his art as a way to think through these kinds of concepts that he's learned in the academic setting, and that it was really, really helpful to kind of think through different ideas and put them together in a different way. And so I found that students have an easier time using these kinds of artistic mediums. Sometimes they work through music. A lot of them work through drawing and painting. I had one student do beat poetry, using these really interesting ways to think through concepts that normally we just have them write an essay or do something of that caliber. And so that's been a really great way to help students connect to things that otherwise might feel distant or unrelated to their day-to-day lives. So those are the 2 things that I wanted to kind of talk about today, and I'm happy to elaborate on any of those. But also I'll hand it off now to the other commentators.
Okay. Thank you, Mackenzie. And Fulgence has sent a message in the chat that he doesn't think he'll get good enough connectivity. So please, for us just to keep going. And he asked me to moderate, and I appreciate the idea now of turning this over to Lynette. But also, Mackenzie, you've raised such interesting ideas that I'm glad we can circle back and ask you some more questions. I know I have a few right now, such as what other medium students have used. And also, did it help your learning and your presentation to see things through the eyes of students who are creating things in other medium, like what might the artwork have raised? But so now let's turn it over to Lynette and for her commentary. And also, I should put this in context that Lynette has taught online courses for many years. And so, Lynette, if you would elaborate more on your work and give us your presentation, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I would first just like to say thank you to the Environmental Peace Building Organization, the University of Delaware, and a special thanks to Carl and Nancy and all those that made this session possible. So I'm Lynette De Silva, and I direct a certificate program in water conflict management and transformation at Oregon State University. I'm regarded as a senior instructor, and I teach classes in water management and water conflict management in particular. And I've also written a couple of books, most recently, that focus on various aspects of conflict resolution, environmental and water related. So thank you, Mackenzie, for your presentation. And I think it's absolutely wonderful that you can incorporate students and have them sort of interact and bring some perspective, or at least some research and background information to current case studies. And so we've done a little bit of that also at Oregon State University. Actually, there was a Columbia River Basin governance kind of initiative that 5 universities within the Columbia River Basin put together. They put together sort of a consortium. They realized that the Columbia River Basin treaty was potentially up for renegotiation, and that there was this wonderful opportunity to revisit the treaty negotiations and potentially look at what was in the negotiations when it took place in the 1960s, and to reconsider how it could be tweaked, or whether it needed to be tweaked at any point. And so actors and stakeholders within the basin came together as a result of the university designing symposiums that would actually move and be held once a year in each state and the province of British Columbia. And the students were involved in this. They were rapporteurs, they took amazing notes, and at the end of these sessions, they were also able to do what might be called a mock negotiation and play out some of the various scenarios that could be put forth as the process evolved. And so students then had the opportunity to bring their skill sets to those particular venues. So, so thank you, Mackenzie, for just reminding me of that. I wasn't even going to talk to that today. So online students in particular have some of the same challenges actually that students on campus have. They do need to have rich, captivating information and case studies brought to their attention. And so, so I teach actually 2 classes that specifically focus on water conflict management. One is at the graduate level, another at the undergraduate level. And one of the things that happened was the graduate course has been running for quite some time. And just in the last year, I had the opportunity of developing an undergraduate version. And I was fortunate to get assistance from our institution because they have instructional design specialists. So I actually designed a course for the first time, even though I've been teaching for over a decade. I got assistance from instructional design specialists that our university has specifically for the online platform. And so I took advantage of this opportunity to enhance course delivery. Not just, it turns out, did it help me in designing a course for the online platform, but it ended up infusing some structure in both the other online classes I was already teaching and the classes I did on campus, because what it brought was levels of clarity and greater, I don't know whether the word is crispness, to the way that I might deliver information in the online platform. There were tighter learning outcomes. And in developing the course, it was nice actually to have someone who worked with me through all the processes week by week. In some ways, it was laborious and time consuming, but now that it's been developed, I see the benefits of it, the richness of it. And for example, what it brought was learning outcomes that were clear, that not only for me, but for the students. The students then had a pathway. They knew where we were going. An analogy I often give, it's just like, are the students going to get on the train to the final destination? Do they know what the final destination is? Or, and having them willingly get on the train is what you want. And then of course you want them to stay on, you want them to be fully engaged. And I just love the examples Mackenzie was bringing in. And at Oregon State University, you know, we do some of the same things. A wonderful component is also internships. Students can get online credit, but actually do an internship within their own community. They can find points of entry that can benefit once they've taken a few courses, that they can then apply that to an organization, an NGO, a US Fish and Wildlife. So it doesn't have to be, they don't have to be sort of trapped in just this online forum. So that is one way that they can take the information they are learning in the online platform and deliver it within their own community. And it benefits the organization with cutting edge information and new and perhaps more advanced ways of doing things. And so it's a symbiotic relationship, right? So even if a student isn't able to travel overseas to do some of these, work on some of these relevant and amazing projects, they can contribute right there in their home. I have lots of information that I haven't even got to, but I want to be respectful of time, and probably there will be opportunities to relay more information in a moment.
Great. Thank you, Lynette. And yes, we will circle back. Thank you. And Mehmet, I'd like to introduce Mehmet Alton Gauss now, who is a PhD candidate at the University of Delaware, where I am, and the Department of Geography and Spatial Sciences. And interestingly, he studied with Lynette at Oregon State University. And also, incidentally, I happened to be taking the class in which Mehmet was a teaching assistant when the coronavirus closures happened. So I know somewhat of the experience. And I also really appreciate the ways that Mehmet helped move the class to an online experience. And so Mehmet, the floor is yours. Is Mehmet there?
Hello?
Yes. Great.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Actually, Mehmet, we can't hear you now. Something happened.
Hello?
Good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's good.
Okay, yeah, I guess the microphone is old. Sorry about that. So thank you everyone for inviting me to this event. It's a pleasure to be here, and to add to what Nancy told when she was introducing me, I was a master's student at Oregon State University. Shortly after, I came to the United States to study my postgraduate degrees. And I worked with Dr. Wolf there, and also Todd Jarvis and Greg Walker, who were very helpful in me finding out what I want to study for my PhD as well. First off, I started with looking at how transboundary water management works. Just I was looking at major basins like the Nile, like the Tigris and Euphrates, but quickly, of course, with discussions through discussions with Dr. Wolf, Walker, Jarvis, and Lynette, I turned my face to the environmental peace building field as well, because I quickly realized that there's a correlation between the environmental management and regional peace. And there, I also obtained the water conflict transformation certificate. Lynette was the director of that program. She was very helpful in me getting that education, and I wanted to keep my science and engineering skills alive. My bachelor's was in environmental engineering. That's why I also obtained a minor in water engineering during my master's. I kind of have tried to have this multidisciplinary approach towards transboundary water management, using my engineering and science background and combining it with my newly learned policy and international relations knowledge, experience. And then I came to the University of Delaware, and I'm studying with Dr. Salim Ali here. Also, Dr. Wolf is still in my committee. He's an external member of my committee. And some of the areas I focused on during my master's and PhD are Abkhazia, Kosovo, North Cyprus, Palestine, South Ossetia, Western Sahara, Black Sea, Crimea, Armenian, Turkish, and Turkish border rivers, Greek and Turkish border rivers, and the Tigris and Euphrates. So as you can tell, the theme is kind of regions and countries that are in conflict with each other, but they share a common water resource. And I look at how those countries that are fighting with each other constantly can cooperate over the shared waters that they have with each other, and how this cooperation can play a role in environmental peace building. So very surprisingly for me, at least, I found out that there is actually much more cooperation than I thought between countries or regions in conflict with each other. My master's thesis was on non-sovereign entities, like Palestine, Kosovo, South Ossetia, Abkhazia. I thought there wouldn't be any cooperation, but I found out there is mostly cooperation on those water resources, not so much environmental peace building aspect of those cooperation, because the cooperation mostly came from political incentives and necessity to work together for fixing a common problem. Third parties also played significant roles. Cultural and spiritual approaches also helped, and low-level management also was very helpful. With that, what I mean is I found out towards the end of my master's that when water is managed, transboundary water is managed at a lower level. I mean between, for example, regional, smaller scale authorities such as regional water department, not the ministry itself. When the low-level institutions manage the water together, it seems to be there's more cooperation, and the politics are kept out of the management. So that also kind of shaped my dissertation research, and I have been writing 3 papers. 2 of them are out right now, for how low-level management can actually help in transboundary water management between countries that are in conflict with each other, that are in severe conflict with each other. I looked at Crimea, between Ukraine and Russia. Crimea newly became part of Russia, and there was a canal that provided Crimea with water, which was cut off after the annexation. And I looked at the Black Sea. You know, you might hear about the issues between the Black Sea countries: Russia, Greece, Russia, Georgia, Turkey, Bulgaria, Romania. Those countries often are at odds with each other, but they still, you know, manage to have a very cooperative management over the Black Sea. Also, the most important one, most exciting one for me is the Black Sea, Armenia, the Turkish-Armenia border river on the Kura-Arax River Basin. There's a dam on the border river that was built during the Soviet period, and there was a joint committee, a small joint committee that was given full authority. That committee was formed by engineers, basically from the border villages, border regions from both sides. So Armenian and Turkish engineers in this small committee, they worked together to manage this shared dam that, you know, that laps on 2 countries, literally, and on the border river. And that was a very cooperative management, despite Turkey and Armenia have very problematic relations. There is no there's no diplomacy, there's no council of countries in the other one. So that was very exciting, and found out more about it with the Black Sea research and the Crimea research as well. So my experience with teaching online has been very limited. As Nancy was mentioning, I was teaching a GIS course for the environment, focusing on the environmental management. Mostly environmental science and policy students and geography students took that course. And then when the COVID hit, I was actually about to conduct an exam the next day. And of course, exam was canceled. The university was shut down for a couple of weeks, and we had to move everything to online and upload all the content online. And it was difficult because it's a hands-on class where we have a lab. We have 30 computers and 30 students. Everybody takes one of the computers, and we go around and help them when they, can't proceed on their own, when they're trying to, work on their project. They're trying to produce a map or whatever they are working on. And we had to make sure everybody could connect to the computers in this specific lab from their home, because the software was very expensive, and the computer requirements, computers had to be very, high quality, high tech, in order to run that software. And most students, including myself, didn't have this kind of computer, and we had to, make sure everybody could connect remotely. And we had to record video lectures. Of course, students lost interest in time, attendance greatly reduced. I had only a couple of months experience with the pandemic, teaching during the pandemic, online teaching from March 2020 to May 2020. After that, I have taken a research position. I'm not really teaching since then, but I think it probably has gotten better after setting everything up. Like Mackenzie mentioned, the first step is pretty painful to set everything up and upload everything online and making sure we are ready for the online education. But after that should get easier, but maybe not so much. Still, it's a challenge. At least it was for us.
Great. Thank you, Mehmet. We have a few minutes. Does anyone have a question that they would like to ask the panelists before we go into breakout rooms? I wanted to take this opportunity just because the panelists have said that they can circle back and elaborate. So I wondered if anyone has a question right now they would like to ask. You can just go ahead and raise your hand or speak up.
I'm curious if, first of all, has anyone done asynchronous learning so that people aren't all in the same room at the same time? Yeah. And the reason I ask is a couple times I've done that, I find that it's actually a lot more effort on the part of the teacher to get the quality of discussion than it is to have the synchronous learning. The asynchronous allows people to come in whenever, but then you're always monitoring rather than showing up once a week for the seminar or whatever. I'm curious if people could comment on that.
Yes, yes. Can you guys hear me? Yes, I actually teach online classes asynchronously, meaning that the students are not online all at the same time. Throughout the week, they're working on one specific topic and they're given tasks which they need to complete throughout the week. Some are individual assignments, but others may be group, and there can even be discussions that take place. And the discussions will begin with a question that would have been prompted by the instructor, in this case me. And a couple of times a week, they're expected to post on that topic and with their responses. They're supposed to come with reputable references and sources. It's not supposed to be like a text where people are doing shorthand or people are just stating their opinion unless they're asked for their opinion. They're supposed to come with reputable information that would come from an academic, some scholarly journal, a thesis, or some information to substantiate anything that they are saying. To advance the discussions during the course of the week, what needs to happen, or what one hopes will happen, is that there will be active participation and that the conversation will evolve, meaning that perhaps at the start of the week, the conversation on a particular topic may be elementary, but the topic evolves and hopefully deepens so that towards the end of the week, when you look at the conversation, the discussion that has taken place, that it has more depth and more substance. Is it a lot of work? I guess it can be. I check in once in a while. I may have something to contribute. And if the class is large enough, sometimes there can be an undergraduate class can have 50 students. So you do sort of breakout rooms. But when I'm fortunate, I also have a TA. So I have an assistant that is also monitoring and is also engaging.
I don't know if I can ask, or if there was still more response to that last question.
No, please go ahead.
So speaking as someone who doesn't do this work at all, but I chair a department in which there may be people interested in doing things like this. I was struck by one connection to some things I have done, which is that at least the descriptions I heard really sounded very much hands-on, right? Very much about engaged learning and actually involved in projects and that kind of thing. And I'd like to hear more about whether that becomes an essential part of this type of course, and and just anything else that could be added. I'm a huge fan of engaging students somehow in the real world, and so I'm kind of interested in what I heard about that here.
So yeah, I think student engagement is a really fundamental part of these courses in particular. So I'm based in the US context. And so I find, right, especially when I'm teaching 200 level classes, which is freshmen, sophomore, 18, 19, 20-year-olds a lot of the time, they just don't have a lot to draw on to understand some of these really difficult concepts. And so that's through no fault of their own, right? But I find students trying to tune out or get disengaged when they can't connect because they don't have any relevant experiences to draw on. And so I find myself trying to do anything and everything that I can to get them engaged in some sort of hands-on way, right? I've brought in guest speakers so far during the pandemic to try and get them to connect to real people on the ground through this kind of artistic medium that allows them to think about things differently. Role playing has been, I've tried to do role playing in games online, and inevitably it goes really badly because there's too many things to manage. I teach synchronously, and it's just I have 3 screens, and it always kind of fails. But there are some interesting lessons in that. And so I'm always, and I'm very open to thinking about new ways to engage students, because, sometimes I'm reading through and I'm just why aren't they getting these concepts? And I finally realized they just have no basis on which to draw. And, it took me traveling to all of these places and working with people and doing really in-depth research and work to understand these dynamics. And so trying to find ways to replicate that, especially in a remote setting, probably is my biggest challenge, but also my biggest goal.
I'd like to jump in if it's okay regarding the same question. First of all, I'm going to put some resources in the chat for later. So some of the resources I've put in are related to what we offer at Oregon State University, and additional resources that you may be able to tap into. So related to students, whether they're undergraduate or graduate, when we're teaching water conflict management, more essential than water conflict management is conflict management. And we also teach it at the personal level. So we're building skills that might be utilized for natural resources or across nations, but we're going to start with the individual. And that is a level we can all tap into. The conflict within ourselves as individuals, and also the conflict between one individual and another. So some of the exercises we do, even in the online platform, is to have students visit with 2 or 3 people that are important in their lives, whether it's their spouse, their boss, their employee, their partner. And in that setting, we ask them to ask permission to have a conversation with those individuals and ask the question, what is it like to communicate with me? And so the student's task is to listen. So we teach listening skills online. You know, they read about it, but then they have to go out and practice it. And they have to know what it's like, what the experience is like for others to communicate with them. So what we're learning in general about conflict management at any level, that it is about communication skills. And so we begin with the individual. And so we're sort of ramping up as the course progresses, from going from the individual to the nation or to the global scale. And we're hoping that in that process, they're finding ways of relating, but also practicing, so that they're not waiting for a water or an environmental conflict to practice conflict management skills, that they can use it every day. So when there is a conflict at any level, they have tools in their toolbox that has been practiced, that may be effective when utilized.
Great. Thank you. And let's go into our breakout rooms now and continue the conversation in a smaller group. The questions that you may want to address are, what have your experiences been with online teaching and learning? What were the special strengths of that modality, and what were the limitations, and how did you overcome the limitations? Let's, I think Sheila, our wonderful tech person, is going to break us into rooms of about 4 people each. And then after about 20 minutes, we'll get back together again and share the best ideas from each room, and then continue. And finally, we'll have Fulgence's presentation of his work in Burundi after we come back and share a few more ideas together. So thank you again for your participation, and we're eager to hear from each breakout room.
Wonderful. I will send you all to the breakout rooms now.
Anyway, we're back, and let's have reports now from the different breakout rooms. Shall we start with breakout room 1? Do we have a reporter from breakout room 1?
You always miss the numbers. So is that our room, or just start and then? Sure,
go ahead.
All right. So I was with Bilal, with Fulgence, and with Lynette. I always end up somehow with instructors in my breakout room. So we spoke about, we had a variety of group, even though it's only 4 of us, we have different experiences. From very developed countries to moderately developed to developing countries. And the main problems, for example, in developing countries is often access to internet, like the basic requirements to be present online and to take online courses. Often people come with a lot of enthusiasm. In the case that we got reported, 20 students report that they're going to be coming, 5 show up, and often even among those 5, the connectivity becomes eventually an issue, which is also my experience when I do some of the volunteering work here in Mexico. When we are in Mexico City with students who can easily afford, then that's no issue, right? The access to internet. Then when you start working a bit with the rural Mexico, then you start understanding what are the complications that people are dealing with. You're having to use the last credit of phone to submit your kids' work and not being able to then afford the internet for yourself to participate in the events. There's always a problem, of course, on the issue of adjusting to time zones. Of course, it's not always possible to do, but accessing to webinars and other. And then there was a bit of discussion there of how engaged students are really in person and how engaged students then become online. We have whether it's which one is more one-way and which one is a two-way communication, also shared their experiences. People who have better experience with online, with students needing to be ready when they come online. And then my experience is a bit kind of contrary to that often with simple fact that students can keep off the camera and so on, they don't necessarily feel that they have to be engaged or even come ready to the classes. Personal experience of complications of teaching theoretical courses, much more complicated to teach theoretical courses online. than actually a more practical, engaged case study situations or classes. What was the last one that you mentioned? If somebody can, or the team can help me. We went across different topics and different actually experiences. Something that I picked up from the previous gatherings that we had in the talking about education is that majority of the messages that were sent out there, majority, I collected all the notes, was that we need to make students get more practical experience, which taking them, to the field cases and so on, going out there, doing the case study, traveling, and here we are discussing the extreme version of where even people don't know each other, professors don't meet the students and so on. So it's not contradictory itself, but those are the things that really have to be taken into consideration, and eventually for online classes to reimagine then the way how we can bring the practical experience if we are 100% only online, because so far the message of our group's education was we need to take students out there. Thank you very much.
Well, I'll report for our group if we aren't sure of our number. We had Carl, Nancy, and Mehmet, and we were talking about how we talked about a number of things about using remote teaching. One of them being that when it's something like the MOOC, that you are essentially reaching such a large number of people that it would have taken decades of teaching regular courses to meet that amount of people. And that in some ways, you never know what the impact of that kind of teaching could be, because you don't meet each person individually, but every once in a while they show up and they recognize you or make that connection, and it's another entry point. Having been in the same class or having been in someone's class can sometimes be a very good entry point for making connections in other frameworks. Some of the more traditional teachers than me were talking about how their office hours were not utilized when they were remote in the same way that they would have been if it was an in-person semester. And there was a concern about the people who don't actively participate online. You know, they have their screen on, but they're not necessarily engaged. And how can you reach out to those people? And we also talked a little bit more about the amount of work that you have to do depending on the style of teaching that you're doing, and how much can it fit in the same, like the general Zoom teaching fits in the same framework as you would be giving if you were in a classroom, whereas a lot of the extra group work and asynchronous teaching is going to take more time and energy sometimes than it would if you were just teaching in a regular classroom. Also that that there are a lot of remote techniques that were being used even before the pandemic, and that can be integrated into classes even if you are having a course in person, such as accessing special guest speakers or virtual tours or other kinds of content that might be inaccessible to a classroom in a certain location, but that by having a session that is uses remote material, you could do a virtual tour or at least see some visuals for the case study, let's say, that you're talking about, and enrich the content that way. And I think one of the biggest points was how to keep people's energy level up. Carl in particular mentioned a 2-day seminar, which when you meet in person and you do a lot of activity in the room can be very energizing. But if you're doing 8 hours straight of Zoom, it's very hard to keep that same energy level up, both for the teacher and for the students, and trying to find the ways to still make it work and work out well. Did I miss anything, do you think? Anyone from my group? All right.
Sounds good. And we have a third group.
Sandra or Liliana, do you want to present?
Okay, go ahead.
So we more talked about a very specific question from Sandra about Indigenous groups and setting up potentially remote or in-person teaching in a new Indigenous venture university being created in Ecuador. And so just talking about the conversation ended up going kind of maybe a little bit away from teaching, but more how, or not necessarily way, but how to incorporate kind of Indigenous groups into a lot of the Indigenous movements that are going on worldwide right now. And so it was more specific in talking through some of those specific questions and points that Sandra had.
Wow, that sounds interesting. Was the discussion revolve around accessibility, like how to take remote learning to Indigenous groups?
No, more about how to present concepts like environmental peace building and the topics that have been discussed here into a group dynamic that has certain expectations or experiences, and how to basically integrate them into that group, into kind of Indigenous movements going on worldwide around environmental peace building and climate change and all of those things.
Wow.
I just would like to add on this, that, for example, the Environmental Peacebuilding Association is already making so many progress on this, because when we joined this program of young reporters, we have the young professionals group as well, making some discussions. And we have one wonderful discussion with traditional communities from all over the world, discussing how the challenges they have is the same. And all them discussing environmental peace building, climate change, and other natural resources threats and conflicts in their lands, and how to decolonize. So there is a lot going on this, and even into the association. So just take a look in our website, because there is a lot going on.
Great.
Yeah, probably I would like to add that through my research experience in the transboundary area between Colombia and Ecuador, that is a very hot region with a lot of guerrilla, coca productions, a lot of indigenous people really exposed to this kind of illegal mining, of illegal activities. It is a good opportunity to bring this a space of education where issues as environmental peace building, conflict transformation, mediation, it can be used as a tool. Is a progressive idea of changing the mindset that there are not excluded people, and they have the capacity to have critical thinking and their own decision over what is happening in their own territories, without forgetting that the traditional and the culture is one of the main issues that they want to preserve and to be intact from generation to generation. So the idea is not to create new generation of Afro-Ecuadorian people or new indigenous people, is to value the knowledge that they have and to incorporate this kind of new knowledge and conceptual and theoretical frameworks that we can provide through our own experience. So I am really looking that we can blend all this experience and knowledge that you are offering every time that I am following these meetings, and to put it all together and offering to this university the idea of we can create something new and probably unique that hopefully in the future we can replicate it.
Well, thank you for bringing in that theme, because it does show like the enormous potential of remote connectivity, and it's wonderful to tie in also like with Mackenzie's work in connecting people, and even to help people in the United States, for example, that don't understand. And for course I'm about to teach, I'm hoping to weave in to use as a fundamental text the book's Braiding Sweetgrass, about a woman who uses who helps us to try to understand indigenous wisdom in a scientific, also with scientific themes woven throughout the book. So I want to say thank you again for those themes, and also thank you to our featured panelists for really extraordinary work. I'm so glad this is recorded so it can be made available online through the EnPAx website. I really appreciate your work on this. And so now I'd like to just thank you, Carl, for starting us off and for providing the leadership for this organization and for all your work on this particular series. I want to thank each of the participants. You've added so much. I hope we keep the conversation going. And I'd just like to then give the floor to Fulgence, who will help us understand some of the peace work that he's been doing in Burundi, and especially his University of Ngozi, where people maintain peace and are now advancing peace education in a country that's known so much strife. So Fulgence, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, here it is. I call my presentation Sustainable Peace and Development in Ngozi, Burundi. So I am in this work with the University of Ngozi, the Rotary Club of Ngozi, and Peace Clubs. So maybe before I talk about my work, maybe it's important I introduce my country, Burundi, so that you can understand my commitment. So this is Burundi, the Burundi map. It is not a big country located in East Africa community. You can see Burundi here. And Burundi is here in the whole region, East Africa. So Burundi is landlocked, and it is located in a region called Great Lakes region. That is known to be unstable in terms of security. So here are the dark, an overview of that times of history from the colonization till now. You can see here, for example, this is colonization here from 1903 till 1962, and in 1962, the Burundi got its independence, but of course after the assassination of its hero, Francois Rwagasore. What followed was killings. You can see here different years. Killings between tribal killings between ethnic groups, Hutu and Tutsi. With the recent crisis around the President Nkurunziza's candidacy for a third term. So during all these periods, there were refugees, deaths, etc. So here are my peacing clubs. The first peacing club is for very rural kids, and this one is for secondary school kids, and here it is the University of Ngozi and students involved in peace English clubs. So in peace English clubs, students learn English through the study of peace and develop topics and themes related to peace, environment, leadership, and entrepreneurship, etc. So you can see here Why English? Because first of all, Burundi is landlocked and depends on its neighboring countries that are mostly English-speaking countries for its economy and exchanges. So Burundi belongs in the same organization with these countries. Burundi has much to gain by learning English and become a full-fledged participant in trade talks, cultural exchanges, public health efforts, and more. So there are also education and job opportunity wisdom, especially for the youth. So you can see here a very, very young lady performing ABC in the Peacebuilding for nasal school, for a nasal school. And here we were on the sidecar performing a game. And this we were during an event with the Peacebuilding Club of the University of Ngozi. So we use games, poems, songs, arts, plays, films to learn and teach peace. You can see here kids during a game. Here is Fadet and Aimable. They were performing a slam and poem. It's me here singing a peace song. Here, Peace English Club members of the University of Ngozi were performing a play, of course, with a topic way to peace. Sorry. And here, this is the Peace English Club of Ngozi University. During the Peace Week at the University of Ngozi, recently in September, it was Peace Week at the University of Ngozi as part of the celebration of the International Day of Peace. 5 Peace English Club members who took war and the environment online course share what they learned in a 1-hour presentation. This is the 5 students, and one of them during the presentation, you can see him. With the certificate he earned after completing the training. And here, during the presentation, they presented on what was to the environment, especially nuclear weapons, before and during and after the wars. The audience was students, teachers, the university staff, and others. You can see here the Chancellor of the University of Ngozi was also there. So Ngozi Rotary Club and the University of Ngozi. There is at the University of Ngozi a peace mural, and that peace mural shows figures of famous peace builders nationally and globally, and their famous quotes, such as Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, and Mother Teresa, and 2 peace builders of Burundi, Prince Rwagasore, the hero of independence, and the President Ndadaye, the hero of democracy. So here are the university and the Ngozi Rotary Club involved in trainings, involved in training the community on sustainable peace and development. This, you can see here Bill Timpson. Some of you know Bill Timpson. He's very involved with the Rotary Club Ngozi and University Ngozi. He has been in Burundi many times. So here it was a conference, and this one was a training, and this one. So from 2019, the Ngozi Rotary Club, in collaboration with the University of Ngozi, have organized 8 conferences and trainings on peace building, environment, disease prevention, and provided 160 certificates of completion to students, teachers, community, and church leaders. And Don Gauss Rotary Club is also involved in providing clean water to communities, the road safety, and COVID-19 prevention. You can see here photos. And in Don Gauss Rotary Club, create also the Rotary Club. Rotary Club is a club for the youth. And those youth are now very involved in many domains that intend to improve the life of community members. So here I'm in all those efforts with Bill Timpson, Dr. Bill Timpson, we are working closely. Here, this is a picture of me after getting one of his books called Learning Life Lessons. This is a book that inspired me so much, especially during the teaching club at university, because I pick up some topics to be discussed. It is a very interesting book, Way to Peace. And here I was his translator during a conference in Burundi. And here I was getting a certificate of recognition from my from my Rotary Club because of the work I'm doing. So thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Fulgence. Thank you, Lynette, Mehmet, and Mackenzie, and Carl, and everybody. Really appreciate your participation, and please keep in touch. Let's keep the conversation going. And please join the Education Interest Group and help us carry these initiatives forward. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.